Thank you, Chair Wagner, for allowing me to wade into this very important hearing and noticing my bill, H.R. 7030, the REG Act. Since the spring of 2021, the SEC has proposed and finalized over 60 rules. When we compare the pace and scope of rulemaking with recent SEC chairs, only former SEC Chair Shapiro has issued more rules than Chair Gensler. My legislation, H.R. 7030, the REG Act, directs the SEC to review all rules every 5 years. And if the SEC determines that the rule is no longer appropriate or necessary to uphold its three-part mission, the SEC could revise or eliminate it. In addition to the review process, my legislation would require the SEC to consider the cumulative effects of every rulemaking, which is something that Chair Gensler has failed to address. Mr. Gulliver, your group has commented on the substantial overlap between many of Chair Gensler's rules. Even the Department of Justice has indicated that without an assessment of a rule's overlapping effects, the SEC cannot effectively assess the impact on investors, registrants, or the markets. Mr. Gulliver, as you mentioned in your testimony, our capital markets are the largest and most efficient in the world. So would you explain why the SEC's decision to review rules in isolation without considering their aggregate impact and interconnectedness can make our capital markets less efficient?
I think there'll be unnecessary compliance burdens, and then I think even more importantly, there'll be conflicts between rules, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that SEC's securities lending rule and SEC's short selling rule are directly in conflict. One requires disclosure on a daily basis, and the other would delay the disclosure of the very same financial activity for a month, and those are in conflict, and that's in court for that reason now.
Mm-hmm. And how would market participants benefit from an understanding of how related proposals interconnect with each other?
Better understand their compliance burden, and it would allow them to, it would better comply.
So would you agree that my legislation can help market participants, investors, and capital formation?
Yes, I think it's critical to look back and assess whether or not rulemakings are still serving their purpose. That's required in the EU now, and that would be an important way that the U.S. could remain competitive internationally.
Right, I agree. My hope is that the SEC understands how each proposed rule can increase costs for smaller market participants. Mr. Sherp, did I say that right? Ms. Sherp, in your written testimony, you speak of a regularized process for revisiting some of the Commission's rules. And my legislation would establish a 5-year review process. So hopefully you agree with the intent of my legislation. So can you elaborate on how a regular review process can help improve efficiencies in our capital markets?
A regular review process is important because what it does is set a schedule. Rather than the political will of a particular chairman, it requires every so many years the review to take place. And that's important because you could very well see a situation where a general idea that we want to revisit rules just never happens when the political will is not there. Taking a look back, particularly where cost-benefit analyses rely on speculative benefits or costs that are not able to yet to be quantified, is very important because then actual costs can be weighed against actual benefits to determine whether the rules are justified or serving their purposes.
Thank you. Under Chair Gensler, the SEC has proposed sweeping new regulatory requirements, often without a clear data-driven need. So this regulation by theory and hypothesis approach is blurring the regulatory lines between the private and public markets. Ms. Sherp, as you know, the SEC's mission is to protect investors, maintain fair and efficient markets, and promote capital formation. However, the SEC under Chair Gensler seems to have neglected its statutory obligation and prioritized other factors over its obligation to promote capital formation. So what factors should the SEC be considering in its economic analysis to properly consider a rule's impact on capital formation?
The gentlelady's
I see
time
my
has expired,
is up.
and I respectfully ask that the witness respond in writing, if you could. It's a very important question.
Thank you very much.